And now the answers to the previous episode's trivia questions. How much did Obi-Wan Kenobi offer to pay Han Solo for transportation to Alderaan?
We can pay you 2,000 now, plus 15 when we reach Alderaan.
What was the new model of Landspeeder that had come out and lessened the value of Luke's Landspeeder?
Look at this. Ever since the XP-38 came out, they just aren't in demand.
It'll be enough.
While still on Tatooine, how far does Luke offer to take Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Look, I can take you as far as Anchorhead.
Hello, and welcome to a Star Wars fan reads Bantha Tracks. Now I'm going to read Bantha Tracks issue number 7. And this issue has an interview with Anthony Daniels. Anthony Daniels is the actor who plays C-3PO. Here we go. While he was on holiday following the end of production on The Empire Strikes Back, Tony Daniels agreed to give up some of his vacation time to give the fan club an interview. We talked with him regarding his training and his early desires to act, as well as about how making The Empire Strikes Back differed from making Star Wars. Below are excerpts from that conversation. You started out studying for a career in business. Yes. When I was 6, I came home from school one day and said I wanted to be a milkman. It was a very early passion I had. I think my parents locked me in a dark room for a couple of days. So I got over that. When I was 6 and a half, I came home and said I wanted to be an actor, and again they locked me in a dark room for 2 days. But this time, it didn't have any effect, and from that day on, I was kind of obsessive about theater. My parents were really beginning to worry. The only thing I was interested in was theater and theatrical situation. So eventually they sent me off to a boarding school to flatten my character. Unfortunately, that particular school had quite a good drama society. So again, that became the only thing. I hated the school and was really miserable, and the one thing I counted on was the productions which we would do twice a year. At the end of my school year, my parents kept asking, "What do you want to do for a job?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to be an actor." They said that was for bums and that I would become a lawyer. So I decided to join a law firm as an apprentice. Right from the word go, I was appalling. I took a lady to court for a divorce case and got bored and waited around. I went for a cup of coffee, and when I got back, she had actually lost the divorce in my absence. It had gone through when I wasn't there. It was quite embarrassing. When I was 21, I had to admit to myself that I really wasn't cut out for it. I studied management for 3 years, but during that time, I did a lot of amateur acting. One night, I was standing there moaning, saying I wanted to be a real actor, and someone turned to me and said, "Why aren't you? Why don't you do it?" Suddenly, these glaring lights came on, the choir sang, and the orchestra played. It was a moment of truth in a grubby little back street theater in suburban country town in England. That was the beginning of it all. What had you done before Star Wars? In England, we don't have a big film industry. I'd only been an actor 2 years when Star Wars came about, and at that time, I'd only done a small film, some radio, and a lot of theater and TV. What was the film? City of Dead for the New York City Opera Company. It was a multimedia production, and it was filmed in Belgium. We had a lot of fun. When I came to do Star Wars, I found it very difficult because I couldn't understand what all the waiting around was for. Theater is generally very efficient. Filming isn't. There's a lot of sitting around and boredom, a lot of tension being dissipated, and never any sense of performance because you never have any audience. You just have a lot of very bored looking technicians and cameramen who have seen it a million times and don't want to see it again. It's like being a guide on the Universal Studios tour. How did you come up with the role for C-3PO? I don't know. I didn't want it. My agent suggested me because he got a list of qualifications C-3PO needed to have. He had to be small and reasonably good at mime. I said I didn't want to do it. She practically dragged me screaming to see George Lucas. I met George, and of course he was a very winning personality, which helped a lot. A lot of Ralph McQuarrie's production paintings were hanging on the wall, and I said to George, "Is your film going to look like this?" He said, "Sure." At that point, I really got interested in the project. I liked the look of those drawings. We talked for an hour, and he sent me a script. When I read it, the character I liked the most and found to be the kindest, the funniest, the sweetest person was this extraordinary robot that I had been asked to play. I got terribly excited at this point. I went back to see George. I walked in, and the secretary asked me when I was going to be cast. I said, "What?" She said, "When can you get cast in plaster for the costume?" I told her that I hadn't been cast in the part yet, and she said, "Oh." I was very nervous and walked into George's office. He talked to me for about an hour, although not about the movie, and by the end of it I said, "Listen, can I play it?" He said, "Sure." We had in fact decided earlier on, but I think he actually wanted to see if I wanted to do it. Quite frankly, you couldn't put up with playing that part unless you truly wanted to do it, so I think that was a necessary stipulation.
New from Kenner's Star Wars collection, the Millennium Falcon that you put together. Batteries not included.
Nice landing, Han Solo. Uh-oh, come on, Chewbacca. Stormtroopers are coming.
Action figures each sold separately.
Got him on radar. I'll fire the laser cannons.
There's even a hidden storage hatch.
Ready for takeoff. Jump to light speed. We're gone. On to the Death Star.
New Star Wars Millennium Falcon. Action figures each sold separately from Kenner.
Was the script they sent you an early draft? Yes, very early one, a kind of blueprint. Were you excited about playing C-3PO? I thought it was going to be very glamorous. On my first trip to the studio, I stood with hardly any clothes on in a very cold room in November while two men threw wet plaster all over me. It took 2 weeks to do all of the molds and was a most unpleasant situation. First of all, I had to be covered all over with Nivea cream and Vaseline. It was a greasy plastic, horrible stuff, and it got hot and heavy and messy. At one point, I was even wearing ladies' tights. They ended up with a facsimile of my body and head. It was so unlovely. How long were you actually shooting Star Wars? 15 weeks. I worked on the first and last shooting days. The very last shot I did was with Gary Kurtz, shooting the scene with C-3PO and R2-D2 in the escape pod, and 3PO says, "The damage doesn't look so bad from out here." The first thing I did was about programming binary load lifters. Was the costume very hot? No, actually, I was cold, and they used to wrap me up in Sand People costume. The costume was so shiny it reflected the sunshine, so I used to stand there and shake with cold. The weather was erratic, wonderful one day and freezing the next. It made everybody pull together. I fell over in the desert once. It was very fine sand, and with 75 pounds of superstructure, I was a little top heavy. One day the sand just gave way under one foot and bang! My fall looked horrible in the making of Star Wars, very nasty, but I didn't hurt myself. What did you do between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back? I spent some time in America doing various things like footprint ceremonies at the Chinese Theater, the making of Star Wars, the Osmond Show, all of which took considerable time. I did a bit of comedy. I love doing comedy. Did your character expand from the first film? That's a very difficult question. Do these characters expand? Does Princess Leia expand? They expand if you fill in some details that weren't there, but C-3PO's character is transparent. I think that's why he's liked by so many people. There's no guile, there's no deviousness, no mystery. He is so obvious, and he always states the obvious. If everyone is cowering back as a meteor hits the window, he is the one who says, "Look, a meteor." In the wrong circumstances, that can be very irritating, but hopefully it can be funny too. Did C-3PO get all the best lines? Yes. There are times when I didn't know how some of the others could say their lines with a straight face. If I had a bad line, I can hide behind the mask. I remember particularly the line, "Listen to them, R2, they're dying and it's all my fault." Even with the mask on, I cringed. But the only way to do it is over the top, to ham it up. And I quite liked the way it came out. Were there differences between the two productions? We had a new director, Irvin Kershner, who I think finds it very easy to communicate with the actors. He is very excitable. Also, the shooting schedule was a bit longer this time. The first film shot for 15 weeks, while this one shot for 18 weeks. Part of that time in Norway. They didn't take me to Norway because the C-3PO costume would literally freeze up in that kind of cold. This time was better because people knew they were on some sort of winner with The Empire Strikes Back. You only had to look at the script to see that it was very, very good. Most times watching a scene in the studio is very dull, especially for the 30th take. But there were some scenes where people were actually crowding in to watch. There was definitely an air of excitement about this project. How was working with the other actors? I think you should ask them what it's like working with me. I must be impossible to work with because it's very hard to hear what I say. You can't see my eyes. Eye contact is very important. You look at somebody and you have a big message there. Well, they can't see my eyes and I can't see theirs. I bump into them, I hurt them, I jab them with my elbows, and I clank. It can't be much fun working with a robot. Also, I have a prettier costume than they do and I glitter. It's a physical thing. If you stand two people on a stage, one wearing a white suit and one wearing a black suit, people will look at the one in the white suit. If you turn one of the suits into gold and make him walk around like a demented lobster being put in a boiling pot, then people are going to look at that. So there is all that to get used to, but they were very good about it. Wasn't C-3PO originally supposed to have a Brooklyn accent? Yes, but he seems to work out better as the butler type. I get letters from people who say that they would like to have C-3PO as a waiter in their house or as a butler or servant. How would you compare The Empire Strikes Back as a movie to Star Wars? The trouble is that no one will believe me if I say that Empire is better. They would think I was being paid to say it. I never expected it to be better, but it is better. What are you looking forward to next? I just bought a house. I've been in America 3 times in the last 3 weeks, and I want to go home and take all the wallpaper off the walls because the man who sold it to me had different tastes. It is horrible. On the Star Wars scene, there are the radio dramatizations coming up, and I did a pair of episodes of Sesame Street as C-3PO a few weeks ago in New York. People will have to watch for that in January. The delayed Muppet Show, where the Muppets meet the Star Wars people, will tape in January. It was delayed because of the strikes in England. Luke and Chewbacca are there along with R2 and 3PO. After that, who knows what I'll be doing. When I'm not doing other work, I sometimes go to the science fiction conventions. It's great fun to meet people who have seen the film 40 times, more than I have. I've seen it 3 times. Most of them know more about the film than I do, and it's a little embarrassing. I should admit that the first one I was invited to was a Star Trek convention, and I don't know quite why they asked me. It turned out to be a success. That is what I do now, chat to the people, and it's amazing the depth of interest. What I love is how they all dress up. Some of the questions I get asked are a little difficult, but I'm learning to cope with them. It's nice to have that audience reaction. I'm not the sort of actor who people come up running to saying you can star in this or that movie in 1983 or 1984. I sit at home like everyone else. My career has its highs and lows all the time, but they kind of even out in the middle. Overall, it's been quite good. That was Anthony Daniels. How about some Star Wars trivia? In order to rescue the princess, Luke and Han pretended to be stormtroopers, transferring Chewbacca from which cell block? According to Princess Leia, what was Grand Moff Tarkin holding? The answers to these trivia questions will be given on the next video. If you don't know the answers, that's okay. Just go see Star Wars again. Or ask a friend who's seen it a lot. Because how else would you get the answers? Time for the questions and answers. When will the novel The Empire Strikes Back be released? Are there any other Empire publications that will be released between now and June 1980? The novelization of The Empire Strikes Back will be released in April 1980. An oversized and illustrated reader's edition will be released in July. Both will be available from Ballantine Books. Other publications coming out include from Random House, The Empire Strikes Back storybook, and the Star Wars comics from Marvel, which will become The Empire Strikes Back comics. There will also be a special large edition of The Empire Strikes Back comics. Paradise Press will continue to publish monthly poster magazines and will be preparing a souvenir theatrical brochure. Cool. Question number 2. How many production paintings did Ralph McQuarrie create for Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, and will they ever be available in book form? Answer. Ralph McQuarrie created 24 production illustrations for Star Wars and 49 for The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back portfolio will be published in the summer of 1980 and will contain 24 of McQuarrie's paintings from Empire. The art of The Empire Strikes Back will also contain much of McQuarrie's work, along with that of many other artists, and will be published in the fall of 1980. It's The Empire Strikes Back Progress Report! During the Christmas season, a new trailer for The Empire Strikes Back, showing more of the new locations, vehicles, and characters being introduced in the film, played in over 1,200 theaters across the United States and the United Kingdom. For those who missed seeing it, still another trailer will be released to theaters at Easter time. The Empire Strikes Back is nearing completion and has been edited by Paul Hirsch and his team. Final work on the many effects needed for the film is being completed by Industrial Light and Magic's team of special effects wizards. Plans have changed since last issue, and it now seems that the world premiere of The Empire Strikes Back will take place in Washington, D.C. on 17 May 1980, and will open across the United States and Canada on 21 May at over 100 theaters, all of which will be showing the film in 70mm and Dolby Stereo. This article concludes our series of Empire Progress Reports. The May issue of Bantha Tracks will contain a special preview of The Empire Strikes Back, complete with stills from the film. Also, in the May issue will be an announcement on the third film of the Star Wars saga. Okay, here's something interesting. Preview of coming attractions. To be mailed out just before the release of The Empire Strikes Back, the next issue of Bantha Tracks will be a special one. Currently scheduled for inclusion is an interview with George Lucas, a full page of photos from Empire, and an article on the special effects created for the film. Don't miss this issue, coming your way May 1980. What's this? 800-521-1980? What's that all about? Since the beginning of February, a special Star Wars telephone line has been in operation, giving information on The Empire Strikes Back. Fans calling the toll-free number will receive messages from either Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, C-3PO, or Darth Vader. The messages will change every few weeks. Wow! The telephone number, 800-521-1980, is the date on which The Empire Strikes Back will be released across the country May 21st, 1980. Unfortunately, this number is only good in the United States. An attempt is being made to set up a similar telephone line in Canada. Introducing Lando Calrissian! While attempting to escape from Imperial forces, the Millennium Falcon travels to the planet Bespin, a gas giant in the Bespin system. The ship lands on Cloud City, a mining colony seemingly floating above the gaseous surface of the planet. Governing the mining colony is Lando Calrissian. Lando is an old buddy of Han Solo's and was the original owner of the Millennium Falcon. Han feels that Lando is a con artist and scoundrel, but when he offers them the hospitality of Cloud City, Han and the others accept. The new addition to the Star Wars saga is portrayed by Billy D. Williams, noted for his fine performances opposite Diana Ross in Mahogany and Lady Sings the Blues. Growing up in New York's Harlem district, Williams studied acting at the Actors Workshop under Sidney Poitier and appeared opposite Angela Lansbury in the New York production of A Taste of Honey. His film credits include The Last Angry Man, The Out-of-Towners, and the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. His most recent stage success was Dr. Martin Luther King in I Have a Dream. Okay, we shall see how Lando Calrissian is. This new character. We shall see how he is. There's information about renewal in Bantha Tracks. I don't think I need to read that. And that's it. That is it with issue number 7 of Bantha Tracks. May the Force be with you.